Jai Gurudev. So, I had mentioned earlier that I would speak on the second darshan that we're going to receive of Lord Narasimha, which is the darshan of Lord Narasimha as Shanta Narasimha, which means the peaceful Narasimha. But he becomes peaceful as a response to the love of Prahlad especially. And it's very important to understand this because in chapter 4, verse 11 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that in whatever way we approach him, in that way he approaches us. So the first darshan that we saw, the Ugra darshan, that was Narasimha meeting Hiranyakashipu. And the second darshan will be Narasimha meeting Prahlad. And so he reciprocates, he responds to the way that they approached him. Hiranyakashipu said, "You are my enemy." He says, "Good, then you are also my enemy. I want to fight you, then I will also fight you." Or Prahlad says, "I want to love you," then he will also love him. And in that sense, spirituality is not rocket science. It's actually the most simple thing. But simple doesn't mean easy. Something can be very simple and very difficult to do. So we should not confuse those two things. And I'm sure if you had to pick between the two darshans, you would not pick the darshan of Hiranyakashipu. Maybe if you're a little sadistic. But I think the idea is more attractive than the reality. So, if you want the darshan of Prahlad Maharaj, if you want the Lord to meet you in a sweet embrace, Prahlad sat on the lap of Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu wished on the lap of Narasimha Bhagwan. And Narasimha hugged him. Narasimha said to him, "Ask me for whatever you want." And Prahlad insisted, "I don't want anything." And Narasimha insisted, "I want you to ask for something." And so they were in this impasse. You know when two people are trying to walk in through the door, but they're both gentlemen. No, you please. You go first. I insist. And eventually Prahlad says, "Fine, Lord, if you insist that I ask for something, then I will ask for something. I will ask that I always remain in your service." He didn't ask that I always remain by your side, that I always be in wonderful situations. No, the rest of Prahlad's life, he was responsible for taking the position of his father. So he was the king of the demons. So was he himself acting like a demon? No, but he still had to rule over these people. But this was not his concern. His concern was that as long as it is of service to you, as long as I can be in your service life after life, then I'm happy. We heard earlier today in the darshan Guruji say what it is to serve, right? He said, when you serve, you don't think about yourself. You don't think, what will I get from this? No, you just think, how can I please the one I'm serving? So like I said, not difficult, not complicated rather. Everything's so simple. But yet, why is it that we struggle? Why is it that Narasimha is not appearing out of a pillar right now in front of us and saying, "Come sit on my lap"? Because to have the love that Prahlad had, to receive then that reciprocation from God is not easy. There are so many things in the way. So many things that we prioritize over that. So many complications that we introduce into our own lives. It is not your path that is doing this to you. It is not your guru that is doing this to you. It is not God. We do this. We complicate our own lives unnecessarily. Because we, instead of following the advice, the teaching, the example of those wiser than us, we think, no, I'm special. I'll do it my way. Good. Then you try to carve out your way and you follow your own whims and you just delay things. But unfortunately, you also get a lot of baggage on the way. When I was growing up in, or rather, the latter years of my teenage years, when I was already following Guruji, but from a distance, I was living in England at the time, finishing my education. I often struggled. I struggled with being far away from him, from Guruji, because once I formed my connection with him, every other connection seemed very weak by comparison, a little pointless. I had gone through an experience in my life from 16 to 17 that had shown me another side of the world. I had been accused of doing something that I had not done, and because of this I lost all my friends. And so the world just flips on you and it shows you another face of how unstable things are, unreliable, and from one day to the next everything can change. And so I learned very quickly what the world is and what it is not. And it wasn't that it made me bitter towards the world, but it made me realistic towards the world. It made me understand not to expect the things of this world to always be by your side when you want them and when you need them, because they won't. It made me understand not to expect perfection out of imperfect beings. I was frustrated. Why don't they believe me? I'm telling the truth. But they don't know that. And they're free to believe whatever they want to believe. Right? And the only person that didn't show me those same limitations, those same frustrations in that time was Guruji. Because from the minute he heard what predicament I was in, he just smiled at me and said, don't worry. I said, Guruji, but this is all very dramatic. Don't worry. What did you hear today in Darshan? The lady asked Guruji the question, there's a pattern in the family. We're scared that something might happen to the children. What did Guruji say? Just don't worry. Don't be negative. But of course, even though I learned those things, it doesn't mean I was good at those things. I have learned the value of humility. Doesn't mean that I automatically become humble. I have learned the value of devotion. Doesn't mean automatically devotion explodes in my heart. You understand the value of something and you still have to cultivate it. You still have to nurture it. You still have to develop it. These things don't come just like that. And so every day, when I would feel alone, I would sit in front of my altar that I had in my room, and all I had on my altar was two pictures. A picture of Guruji with the biggest smile, because I don't want Guruji not smiling. I loved praying. I loved that phase of my life, because every time I had a problem and I would say, Guruji, what do you think? Is it going to be okay? He was there smiling. So I said, that's a good sign. Everything will be okay. The real life Guruji sometimes would not smile, so that was more dangerous. So the picture was good. And the second picture was a picture of Narasimha. You see, at the time in London, the temple that we had in the Sangha was dedicated to Lord Narasimha. And it was my first engagement, whatever you want to call it, with devotion in a temple that I would really commit to as a regular thing. I had, as I told you earlier, been in ashrams and different spaces throughout my youth, ever since I was 10 years old. But to really make a temple your temple, that you visit regularly and you pray and you do kirtan and you do all these things, this was Narasimha temple. And you have to understand, when I was going through my difficulty, where people had turned their backs on me, I go to the temple that they recommend me I visit, and they tell me this deity This deity is the protector of the devotees. And I thought, that's rather convenient, because that's pretty much what I need right now. And so, without knowing much, I just had a card from the temple that had a picture of the deity, and on the other side of the card it said, Ugram Viram Mahavishnum Jwalantam Sarvatomukam Narasimham Bishanam Badram Mrityum Namamyam. And so I would just chant this every day. Sit in front of my little altar and chant. And I cannot do justice to the feelings that I received in return from that picture. The feelings that I received from the deity that I would visit every Thursday night for kirtan. And when I eventually later in my life took a devotee initiation and I went to Guruji, I said, Guruji, who's my Ishtadev? He almost looked offended by the question. He looked at me and he said, you don't know? I said, no, I'm following protocol. You're supposed to ask. He says, tell me who your Ishtadev is, he said to me. And I said, it's Narasimha. And he said, of course it's Narasimha. And he walked off. I actually tried something else first before I told him it was Narasimha. I asked him if I could have him as my Ishtadev. He said, no. We don't do that. Just tell me who your Ishtadev is. I said, Narasimha. A few years later, I was with Guruji and we went for a pilgrimage to India, and I was in Navadvip. And then we went to Mayapur afterwards, and then we went on the Kumbh Mela. And we went to the ashram of one saint called Radharaman Charan Das, and he had a disciple that was serving the deity. There was a deity of this saint, and there was a disciple serving that deity. And I promise you, that disciple looked identical to the deity. 1-to-1. And Guruji said to me, he says, you see, Revati, when someone is so surrendered to their spiritual master, they start to resemble them. And I looked at him, I'm assuming you know where this is going. And I looked at myself, and I thought, well, isn't that a little unfortunate? Wrong skin color, wrong hair color, wrong eye color, wrong size. A lot of predicaments here. And I remember not complaining at the time because he just moved on, just to let that linger. And I remember going home and thinking, well, what can I do? And I thought maybe I'll get super tanned, or I'll grow out my hair. I don't know. It just feels a little futile. A month later, we were in France, and I was sitting with Guruji. We went inside a church. He said, oh, look, there's a nice church. Let's go inside and see. So we went inside, and I was sitting there in one of the pews, and an old French lady, she walks up to me. She says, oh, you look a lot like Jesus, and just walks off. And Guruji was sitting there, and he looks at me. He says, not really. And I said, Guruji, she did say it. It made me laugh because we made a little joke that, Jesus is the only guru that I could resemble. He's got the right skin color. And Guruji said, maybe not even that. And I said, So, but it got me thinking. I was like, are there any white gods in Sanatana Dharma that I could perhaps grow to resemble one day? And of course, I didn't have to think long. I said, well, there is a certain lion that is lion-colored, which is a little closer to what I'm working with. And he has a big mane and a beard, kind of. And I was like, this is negotiable at least. So I left the thought behind. I thought, whatever. Just a nice little thing. 2 months later, it was Narasimha Chaturdasi. And we were back in London with Guruji at that same temple that I used to go and pray to Narasimha, where I first built my relationship with Lord Narasimha. And it was a very, very beautiful Abhishekam for me. I was crying tears of great appreciation and gratitude at how far I had come. And very grateful to him for everything he had done for me. Because I appreciate how different my life could have been. It is not every person that in their teenage years decides that the world is unreliable and I should surrender to my Sadguru instead. And so I'm sitting there praying in front of the deity. After Abhishek, everything had finished. And then it was maybe 3 o'clock in the morning. I think maybe I should go sleep. So I go up to the room and there was like 7 of us sleeping on the floor, wherever there was a spare corner, people just sleeping. Next morning, I'm sleeping and I hear some giggling. And I'm sleeping thinking, is this in my dream? Is this? Feels like it's out here. But I don't, like, whatever. It's probably some of the roommates being stupid and I'm still tired, so I'm happy to keep sleeping through this. I won't open my eyes. I won't, Keeps going. And I start to feel something on my face, right? So, like when you're sleeping and you kind of just like, maybe it's just, I don't know, pillow, whatever, you just, right? So I just smack it away. And then the giggling gets louder. And I recognize one of those laughs. I said, that's Guruji. So this is suddenly not so good anymore, because if Guruji's laughing and I'm feeling things on my face, 1 + 1 = 3 here. So I open my eyes and they have 7 guys crouched over me and Guruji with a permanent marker in his hand, right? With a big smile on his face. And he says, go look in the mirror. So I thought, okay, this must be good. Because he's having so much fun with this, it must have been a good job. And I'm like, you know those times when you sleep and you really knock out. So like your face is like squished in a new position and your hair is, like a duck's behind and all these things are going on. And so I find the mirror, puffy eyes, and I look in the mirror and he drew whiskers on my face. Right? And Guruji comes following me into the bathroom and he's like, look, like Narasimha. And I looked at him and I said, funny joke. We got home to Sri Pittanilaya and I told this story in a satsang. And Guruji was in the temple at the time, and so he interrupts whatever he was doing and he starts to add some commentary to my satsang. And he says, oh, you know why I did it though? Because he's very upset that he can't look like me. And I'm like, well, first of all, thank you for exposing me. And he said, yeah, because, wrong skin color, this one, wrong skin color. I was like, they understood the first time, Guruji. It was... So then we finished this. We go up for dinner. And I said, Guruji, we were laughing together. And I said, Guruji, but it really is a little unfair because like the Mauritian devotees, they don't even have to try and they already look like you. Surely this is not a sign of their surrender. And he said, they are so surrendered. So much dedication. And I knew he was just rubbing it in. So he looked at me and he says, "You really want it, huh?" And I said, "I don't want to look like you. I want to surrender to you. And if surrendering to you makes me look like you, then yeah, sure. But I really want to surrender. I want trust. I want faith. I want the good stuff." And he says, "Okay." A few days pass. Comes to me and he says, "Come here." I go with him. And he goes to the bathroom of one of the residents in his home, and he pulls out this old scale that he had there, where you weigh yourself. And he says, "Let's weigh ourselves." I didn't look like this then. I was quite a bit skinnier, so I thought, sure. Today I would think twice. And so Guruji climbs on top, and it said 82 kilos. Okay, this was in Germany, so it's kilos. And I, at the time, I think I used to weigh maybe 77, something like that. And I hop on, and it says 82 kilos. And I think, it's Guruji, it's old, it's broken. And he says, "Yeah, maybe. Let's get a different one." So we go to his bathroom. He had a second scale, so we bring that one. And Guruji goes on top, 82 kilos. He says, "Now you." And he's very excited. "Now you." And I said, "Okay." I go, 82. I must have put on weight. Okay. And Guruji kind of looks at me disappointed that I'm not getting it. So he says, "Okay, fine." And then every time I come for dinner, he says, "Let's go weigh ourselves. It's weighing time." So then maybe the next day it was 84 kilos, and I would be 84 kilos. Then the one after that would be 81, and I would be 81. Whatever his number was, I'd get the same. And I said to him, if you were going to make a Leela that I resemble you, you could have picked something better than weight. Maybe unconditional love. The list goes on. Then Guruji started to get a little bigger, 88. And I was 88. But the body wasn't catching up. It was just a number on a scale. I was still skinny like I was and still normal. And then we went to France again. And Guruji has one thing about him is that he's allergic to cats. So if he's around cats, starts sneezing, throat starts closing. And I had cats at home my whole life. Growing up with cats, whatever. I never was a big fan, but my family was, so whatever. We go to France, there's a house of a devotee, she has multiple cats. So we go inside, Guruji starts to scratch his nose. I'm dying. I go inside, I feel like I can't breathe suddenly. My nose is going insane, my eyes. I'm like, what is going on? I feel like I'm having some attack or I don't know what is going. And Guruji just smiles and says, "That's cat allergy." And I'm like, man, we moved from weight to cat allergies. And he's just there smiling at me, having the time of his life. And I'm thinking, what's something else I know about him that I wouldn't like to have also? Just so I can prepare myself for what might come next. But at that point, he looked at me and he says, "You got the point, huh?" I said, "I got the point, Guruji, thank you." And so what happened was we stopped this. There was no more weighing, there was no more any of this. But unfortunately, he left me off at a high weight. And so my body just caught up. And I was like, so much of this is not fair, of this entire process, but it is sweet, so I won't complain. he helped me in so many different moments get over myself and the games that we play with our own narratives that you tell inside your mind. I thought, if I experience these things, if I get close to him, if I make him the number one thing in my life, then I will soon realize God, and I will have unconditional love in my heart, and Krishna will be dancing in there, and all these things. Only to realize that being around him, being like him, doing what he does, even to a minuscule amount, is very taxing. It's not easy. It's not a walk in the park. And you start to see that side of things, the responsibility, the weight. And we talk, and we talk, and we talk. And he, for a long time, for many years, he would talk with me about those things, about what responsibility looks like, about what it means to help people, what it means to set an example, what it means to do so many things. And he said, you know, again, it all sounds so easy, but to actually do it, you cannot fake it. You cannot inspire with fake things. You cannot lead with fake qualities. None of that is possible. And so it takes a lot. It takes a lot of trust and a lot of allowing yourself to be molded. And I said to him, Guruji, then why? Why so few? And he said, so few. I'm still seeing if there's even one that I'm satisfied with. I said, why is that? And he said, because too much ego. Just too much ego. Too much I, me, and mine. I'm telling you all this because I wanted to tell you a story. It's a story that I think will be quite relevant to Guruji's tour cancellation. So many years ago, we were there in Sri Nilaya in Germany, where Guruji was today when he gave us the darshan. And there was a darshan, and we were all getting ready for the darshan. We're all sitting in the darshan hall waiting for darshan to happen, singing, clapping, awaiting Guruji's arrival. And then suddenly the news trickles into the room that Guruji will not be coming for darshan because he is unwell. Okay? Now, he had never ever cancelled a darshan. Ever. And everybody sitting in the room just sort of doesn't know what to do. Like, how do we respond to this? Guruji's cancelled darshan, but he is there, but darshan is cancelled. So I was sitting there at the time in the music corner, I was playing mridanga, waiting, and I think, well, let me go see with Guruji what's up, because I was immediately concerned. So I get up, I go over to where Guruji lives. It was maybe a 5-minute walk. I ring the doorbell. They answer the doorbell. I walk inside. I walk in and I see Guruji sitting on an armchair with two Prabhus by either side, like pressing his back, like massaging his back. And he's just sitting there going like this, so much pain. And I said, Guruji, what happened? And he said, I don't know, I tweaked my back, something happened, like a spasm or something. This is so painful. I can barely walk, I can barely get up. And I see this, and of course my heart, goes out to him immensely, and I'm thinking, is there anything I can do? You know how everybody becomes a doctor suddenly. My grandmother used to have this cream, and right, so all of this starts to happen. And I said, Guruji, so what can we do? And he said, first of all, Revati, go do something with the people. No, they're all waiting for me. You go and do something with them. I said, well, go do something with them. I mean, I wasn't a Swami at the time. I was a brahmachari. And he says, no, you go entertain them. And I'm thinking, okay, but I have to replace darshan. That's not mild entertainment that just sort of replaces darshan. Like this, I might get lynched. Like, this is not good, right? And he says, no, it'll be fine. You go, what's that? You like to do these Guru Gita satsangs. You go and do a Guru Gita satsang. So at the time I used to do these Guru Gita study circles. People used to come and I would open up Guru Gita, read some verses and share stories about Guruji. And so the news went, ahead of me to the darshan hall where people were waiting eagerly. Go to the light hall, it's another area. Swami Revati will come, not Swami Revati, but he will come and he'll do Guru Gita Satsang. So by the time I get down there, everybody's packed in that room waiting for me, like sardines in a can, right? They're all there. And they all look at me like I am the worst creature ever created. Like they're just looking at me like this. And I walk in and I just think, sounds good. And I walk in and I think, Guruji, now is the time. I need prayers. I need inspiration. And if you're not going to give it, then baby Jesus, you're next. Because, you know, I always say this. I don't pray to baby Krishna because baby Krishna is naughty. He breaks things, he steals things. I can't deal with that. I need solutions immediately. So baby Jesus, very sweet, merciful, doesn't do any of these things. So sometimes when I'm in desperate moments, baby Jesus, right? Otherwise, okay, I'm willing to negotiate. Krishna, do what you have to. But sometimes I need immediate results. And so there I am praying. And I open the Guru Gita. I'm sitting there in this chair, packed room, expecting the greatest satsang that has ever been given. And I open, and I just sort of like say, okay, I'm going to open a random page, and off we go. And I open, and I read that there is a story that Guruji tells in the commentary, I think of verse 54 or 55. Guruji tells a story of a guru called Vedadarya and his disciple Deepak. And this happens in Kashi, in Varanasi. And the story is that Deepak was seeking for his guru. He wanted a guru, he needed a guru. And he saw many gurus and none of them really, he felt like, nah, yes, this isn't the one. And then he saw this guru, Vedadarya, and immediately he had the recognition. This is the one. He felt it immediately. This is my guru. And he goes to him and he says, please accept me as your disciple. And the guru looks at him and says, I have to first warn you. You see, you're seeing me how I am now, but I'm going to go through some very severe changes very soon. I have very heavy karma on me. And so it will manifest as a deep sickness. I will be so sick, I will be incapable of looking after myself. I will become short-tempered, moody. You sure you want to be my disciple? And Deepak says, yes, I'm sure, because he knows what he felt. He says, yes, I'm sure. So Vedadarya says, okay, but don't say I didn't warn you. And Deepak says, fine. So, just as he said, shortly after, Vedadarya starts getting really sick. He has wounds in his body and frailties and all kinds of complications. All he can do is lie down and speak. He can take a little bit of food, he can do some minimal activities, but really not much. And so he says to Deepak, okay, you are my disciple, now look after me. And he says, okay, what should I do? Go get me some food. I don't have money. I don't have money, go beg. So Deepak has to go and beg. So he's begging for money to then buy the food, to then cook the food, to then feed his guru. He succeeds, cooks the food, starts to feed his guru. His guru says, disgusting. So bad. Where's the salt? Where's the seasoning? So he says, okay, sorry. Next day, nice seasoning. He begs again, makes arrangements, gives it to him. Bah! Disgusting. So much seasoning. And on it goes. Deepak had to wash him, bathe him, help him go to the bathroom, cook for him. And all he ever got in return was scolded. Never a smile, never one positive word, nothing of the sort. Not once. And he goes on. And at some point, Deepak starts to feel a little sorry for himself. He starts to think, this is difficult. And as he's walking home from begging, suddenly he has the darshan of Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva appears in front of him and says, I'm very pleased with you. Ask me for anything you want. And so he says, but Lord, I'm very confused. I didn't pray to you. And he says, just what do you want? He says, well, okay, I have to go and ask my guru what I should ask for. So can you just wait, please? I'll go and ask my guru, and then I'll come and let you know. But please, just wait. So Deepak goes to Guru Vedadarya and he says to him, look, Lord Shiva just appeared in front of me, and he says I can ask for whatever I want. What should I ask for? And the guru says, liar, as if Shiva would appear to such a useless person. Right? Not possible. So useless like you, why would Shiva appear to you? And he says, but Gurudev, he did. But what should I ask for? He says, okay, even if he did appear in front of you, you kept him waiting and then came here? You're so useless. And so he says, oh my God, you're right. Let me go and apologize. He goes back to where he left Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva's gone. And so he thinks, oh my God, I'm so bad. I'm so terrible. I disrespected Lord Shiva. I disrespect my guru. I'm so useless. But he goes on serving. He doesn't give up. 2 years pass like this. Every day the same. After 2 years, Lord Vishnu appears to him and says, I am so pleased by you. Ask me anything. But now, you see, Deepak's a little switched on. He's a little prepared for this because it happened before. So he says, can I ask, Lord, why? I'd like to know why. I have not uttered one mantra. I have not prayed to you. I have not done any of these things. Why do you come? And he says to him, because such is your love, such is your dedication, such is your devotion to your guru, I could not stay away. He could not resist him. And he says, well, if the service to my guru brought the Lord of the universe to my humble abode here, then I only want one thing. Please give me infinite service to my guru, infinite devotion to my guru that has led me to this wonderful occasion. And he says, blessing. And he goes back from this meeting to go look after Guru Vedadarya. And as he gets there, he sees that his guru is healthy. He's standing up, no sores, nothing wrong with him. And he gives Deepak, without saying a word, the biggest hug. And he says, Deepak, as you belong to me, I belong to you. And this is the story that I opened the book to. And I look at it. And I look at the people. And I look at it. And I think, no. There's no way. Is Guruji faking it? Is he really hurt, or is he just... No. But now I have to give satsang. So I'm thinking, okay, park that for a second. As soon as this satsang is done, I'm going to go and confront him. And I'll say, this is what's going on. You're faking it like this Guru Vedadarya did to test the devotees. But I need to be careful. Because if he's not faking it, bad things are about to happen. Okay. So I start to speak to the devotees there and I say, do you all believe that Guruji needs to physically be here and put his hand on your head to bless you? And they looked at me and they said, no. I said, okay. So are you upset that he cancelled darshan? And they said, yes. Why? Because you're not getting darshan? How do you know that you're not getting darshan right now? And I kid you not, people were like, they start to like, wow, it could be happening right now. Right? And I said, could be. This is the thing, you don't know. You don't know when God will come and appear in front of you. You don't know when you will get the blessing of God. You don't know when these things will happen. They can happen out of nowhere. But if you're only ever expecting it in one way, then you can miss all the other ways in which God is showing up in your life. all the other ways in which He is blessing you, because you only want it one way. And everybody in the room started feeling so happy, so encouraged, because they thought, wow, the feeling that Guruji might be right here with us right now, blessing us in untold ways that we can't even imagine. And everyone just suddenly realizing how limiting their belief was that it has to happen only one way. And they were all happy. And they left the satsang and said, let's go do an Om chanting to heal Guruji's back. And so I start walking through the ashram and there's Om chanting circles happening with pictures of Guruji in the middle. Om. I get stopped by like 5-6 people saying, you know, he has to take these tablets and he'll be fine. Or put this cream or make this tea. And the whole ashram was concerned with only one thing, Guruji's well-being. There were no problems, there was no weirdness, there was no nothing. I never felt the ashram so full of love as I did in that day. And I was more than convinced, this is a full fakery. And it's a phenomenal idea. And so I go up to his home and I ring that doorbell once more. And I walk in. And there he is, sitting on the same chair. My back. Revati, how was the satsang? Guruji, funny that you ask. It was very inspirational. So, you know, I read this story of Deepak and Vedadarya and he said, yeah, it's fine. So what are the people doing now? And I said, they're all doing Om chanting for you. He said, Om chanting? I said, yes. And I have all these creams and pills and tablets also in case you want. Some oils, some ointments. He's like, very good, very good. So they're not upset. I said, no. They're not sad. No. They weren't complaining. I said, no. Guruji, I never felt so much unity and love in the ashram as I do right now. And he looked at me and he said, really? I said, really? He said, okay. So he gets up, completely fine, and says, I'm going to make a tea and then I'll go for darshan. And I said, I knew it. And I didn't have to accuse him of fakery. He exposed himself. I said, I knew it. And he looks at me and he smiles and he says, psst, don't tell anyone. I said, no. This is the best story ever. What do you mean I can't tell anyone? He said, in some months you can tell them. But for now, you shut your trap. I said, I will. So he goes, he makes the tea. And he says, okay, tell them I'm coming. So the announcement comes, Guruji's coming. And I said, Guruji, but what do we tell them? Why are you okay now? And he said, tell them the Om chanting worked. So he leaves the house, but actually the minute he leaves the house, he's immediately like limping and says, So he walks down very dramatic, limping, like all of this. He deserved an Oscar, I tell you. He gets into the room, sits down and starts giving darshan. Everybody's so happy. After darshan, we meet again for dinner. He comes and he smiles at me and he says, you know, it's so interesting. I never had a darshan that was so full of people, not focused on their problems, but just grateful. Just grateful to get the darshan. Nobody brought any questions or problems to me. And he said, the only sad thing is, I had to pretend to be sick to remind people of their better nature. Because every time I come here, all they bring is their problems. Guruji fix this, Guruji fix that, Guruji tell me this, Guruji tell me that. Nobody comes with love. They only come with problems. But it's not that they're not capable. You see, what I did today was only to remind them of the love and the gratitude that they are capable of expressing if they would just choose to. If they would just choose to do that. And this is what I said to you at the beginning. Spirituality is so simple, but it's not easy. because we overcomplicate it. To have the darshan that Prahlad received, you have to be a child like Prahlad. Because the child doesn't complicate things. And the child doesn't come with a litany of problems saying, God, fix this. He just was happy to see his beloved. And so his beloved was happy to see him. And so we have to only think and consider what it is that we must simplify in our lives and what it is that we must do to have that love and not those oceans of problems when we come to meet God in the temple, when we sit with God in our sadhana, and when we come to Guruji to receive his blessings. And then you too will receive the darshan that Prahlad received. Jai Gurudev.